Hi, Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Fly Fishing, and today we're going to do a very old pattern, and it dates back to the late 1800s. It's called the Black Prince, and it's similar to the Black Gordon. It's a simple pattern, and it uses a two-color body, which is kind of cool. Predominantly black, as the name suggests. And, you know, if you're fishing in dirty water, I mean, black often works best. In fact, around here, one of the sayings was you can use any color you want for steelhead as long as it's black. Let's get tying and have a look at the materials. We're going to use a size 2 Salmon Single for a hook. Our thread is a black Veevus 8/0. Our tail is red saddle hackle. Our rib is a medium silver oval tinsel. The rear portion of the body is yellow yarn. And the front half of the body is black mohair. I'm using mohair, it's nice and buggy and it fluffs up more. The front end of this is supposed to be a little bit buggier. I'm going to use black Schlappen for the hackle. You want a nice soft buggy hackle with this. And the wing is black bucktail. So let's get tying. Since this is a wool body, there's no requirement to be neat. Okay, now to tie in our tail. There we go. And our rib. Now our yellow yarn. Keeping everything on the side just to advance your thread. Now, we're going to be putting yellow over black and red here. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling it tight. I'm going to make 3 passes. I'm going to pull the wool quite tight, and I'm going to run it to the end of where I tied in the tail. Bring it back. Get a pass right at the end. I'm keeping it tight so I can keep the size down. Okay. Now, because I've done that, the black will not show through. It's less of a problem with yarn than it is for floss, but it can still muddy up the color of the floss if you've got black thread underneath. Okay, now we put in the mohair. This stuff is really buggy. Wind it right back to the yellow, nice and tight up against the yellow. Get rid of that tag. Now, this one thing to mention about mohair. If you wanted to reduce the bugginess of it, spin it, and it will tighten up on you. But if you want it to stay buggy, then don't. So I'm not spinning it this time, and you can see it's really a buggy looking. I can make a couple passes back just to thicken it up. One more there. Okay. Okay, a couple of wraps to lock it off. Now you can see there's bits coming forward, so I try to work those back. Now it's time for our rib. Just put a turn at the back. Now come forward. Now you see it skidded there, and that's to be expected because I'm changing the thickness of the material. Now you see the spacing is screwed up here, so that's to be expected. As I say, you're changing the spacing of the material, so you're going to get a different wind on your rib. There we go. Just take your time. There we go. Let's bring your thread back. Now, at this stage of the game, if you wanted to, you can pick out, use a toothbrush and pick out some of that mohair. There we go. You can see I'm taking some loops, I'm just picking them out. There we go. That is very, very buggy. Okay, now for our Schlappen, and this is a fairly dense hackle, so you know it's going to be a lot here, so the eye is going to get a little bit crowded. So I'm going to work my thread back a little bit. I know I'm going to be winding over that rib to start, but don't worry about it. Okay, I'm going to just get an idea of what my hackle is looking like. Maybe one more turn. There we go. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to pull off some of these barbs that I'm not going to use. There we go. Now it's a lot easier to tie in. There we go. Now time for a bucktail. This is not a big wing, so don't take too much. This is an opportunity. Sometimes your bucktail has short hairs and long hairs. This is an opportunity to use some of the short stuff. So I'm going to take this clump, I'm going to get rid of the short hairs. And there's lots of long hairs here too, so I'm going to take those out as well. Something you could do with this wing if you wanted to is stack it. And you know, I often don't stack my wings, but I'm going to stack this one just because it's not a long wing. If you don't stack it, there's a, you know, the ends could be quite so thin that it's not noticeable as a wing almost. So I haven't stacked this a lot. I'm just giving enough of a stacking. Get rid of that stray. Okay, size that up. Trim it. When you're working with bucktail, or any hair for that matter, if I'm working with a clouser, sometimes I trim them, sometimes I don't, depending on the size of the clouser. When you don't have a lot of head to work with, it's better to trim the wing first than try to trim it after you have tied it in. That often doesn't work. It ends up with a lumpiness. But finish. And time for a little head cement. There we go, the Black Prince. I think that's a rather attractive pattern. Very buggy, very bushy. That little splash of color at the tail, especially when you present it with sort of a butt end to the fish as opposed to broadside. I think it'd be quite attractive. And should do quite well. Should be able to catch a nice load of fish with this fly. Anyway, give it a try, the Black Prince. Very old pattern, and sometimes the old patterns work best. Cheers.